Welcome to OIC, the podcast that shines a light on innovation and discusses the technology currently being developed at the University of Alabama. Join us as we chat with UA's top inventors, uncovering the inspiration behind their technologies and how they plan to make an impact on society. And now, from the Office for Innovation and Commercialization in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, your host, Caitlin May.
I am here with Dr. Michael Fedewa. So welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Well, I started here at the University of Alabama in 2015. I have my PhD from the University of Georgia in body composition and metabolism research. And most of my research has been on exercise and weight loss and how exercise can be used as a weight loss tool for those of us who are trying to go that route, why it sometimes isn't effective for weight loss and folks that are maybe having trouble. And so, up until this point, my research at Alabama has been trying to figure out kind of why weight loss for a lot of people is unsuccessful.
Oh, that sounds like something a lot of people are going to be interested in. So what's your answer?
Everyone knows that they should exercise because it's such a healthy, it's such a healthy behavior for a number of clinical conditions and diseases. I mean, it can be used to treat almost every disease under the sun with exercise and physical activity. But for some reason, weight loss, it's not as effective as those others. But if you ask someone what the secret to weight loss is, almost everyone would tell you it's exercise, but it rarely ever works.
Yeah, I think I would have thought exercise too, exercise and diet. So how did you fall into that line of work? Can you talk a little bit about your path towards that research topic?
Yeah, I never in a million years imagined that I would be here.
Really? Isn't
I started
that funny?
out, oh man, like the path that got us here. So when I was in high school, actually all the way from childhood up through high school, I dealt with weight issues for most of my life. And
Okay.
I think at my heaviest, I was around 300 pounds and lost most of it through diet and exercise, even though we just said it doesn't work. Lost most of it through diet and exercise. And it was then at that point just hooked. And so I chose an undergraduate major thinking that I was going to help people make the same lifestyle changes that I did.
And what was that undergrad major?
Exercise science. So kinesiology.
Exercise science, that's right.
And I did. I thought that I was going to make my millions and impact the greater good as a personal trainer and as a strength coach and a group fitness instructor. And I remember this aha moment when I had my first client. They were a congestive heart failure, double knee replacement. I mean, just clinically, they had a ton of things that had kind of gone off the rails, and just felt horribly unprepared. So decided to go back and really focus a master's degree in clinical exercise science and focus on cardiac rehab and obesity. And at that point, after being in kind of that area for a couple of years, it seemed silly to wait and treat a heart attack after it already happened. It made more sense to me to try to stop it from ever occurring in the first place. And so really kind of jumped into these kids and adolescents and those who are kind of struggling with weight issues early on, and kind of that's where my research has landed. So it's been a long journey trying to figure out more probably about myself than anything else, and maybe why I was this one of the few successful cases maybe that did lose weight, and why it doesn't work for everyone.
So when you were saying like treating it at the start, can you talk about what you mean by that and what that might look like for people like myself who are outside of your field? So
with where it starts, we know that weight issues from childhood track to adolescence. So we know that if you're an overweight child, you're probably 90% of them will become overweight adolescents, and probably about that same percentage will stay within the same weight category, so overweight or obese, as they move from adolescence to early adulthood and then into middle age. So we know that this stuff tracks, and we know that the behaviors track. So we know that physical inactivity or sedentary behaviors tracks throughout the lifespan. And so the longer that you kind of have this cumulative effect of poor diet, low activity, and struggling with weight issues, the longer that you have to deal with that, the more of a burden it takes on your health. And so it made more sense to me to start early and start adopting with youth, with kids, with young adults, to start adopting these healthy behaviors that we know are beneficial for weight management, for disease management down the road. We know are going to be beneficial, that can maybe maybe steer them off that path and maybe put them hopefully
Sure.
in the future into a different, a different weight trajectory. People, their behaviors are surprisingly consistent, and so we can look at and almost predict with almost perfect certainty like how somebody will behave and the person they'll become from all the way through the lifespan, which is great in some cases, and sometimes can be a little bit depressing, but I think that gives us an opportunity for research and an opportunity for for cool projects and interventions to try to figure out how we can make a difference.
Sure. So what are some of the projects that you're working on right now?
Yeah, one of the things that we're working on in our lab is trying to figure out why the weight loss isn't successful. And so for the past couple of years, we've been putting people on an exercise program and watching to see how they'll respond, and everything that happens outside of the research lab. So for instance, if we have somebody come into the lab, we'll put them on an exercise program and we will watch them every minute and every second and every step that they take in the lab. We'll measure every single calorie that they'll burn, and then kind of release them back into the real world and have them go about like the other 23 hours of their day and see what changes. If they eat a little bit more during the rest of their day because they feel hungry, like what types of foods are they craving? If they change their behaviors during the rest of the day, do they sit more? Do they move around at a light intensity, more, and tend to cut down on their vigorous activity? I think that one thing that we've just assumed is that I can take 300 calories that I might burn on a run and add that to what I was burning already during a normal day. And so now instead of burning 2,000 calories, I'm burning 2,300 calories. So we just added on to whatever we were normally doing. And that's not true. You sit more during the rest of your day, and you tend to move around at a little bit lighter intensity. You tend to kind of shave off those calories that you burn during exercise. You tend to cut them in other places, or you tend to eat a little bit more during the rest of the day because you feel hungry, or you've earned it in some cases. Like if you go to the gym, you worked out, I've earned an extra cookie, or I can snack a little bit here because it's a reward, it's an incentive. And so like, if you burn 300 calories at the gym working out with your trainer, but then you say, well, I earned it today, I'm going to have an extra serving of this, then at the end of the day, you're still at a net calorie balance of 0. So you haven't made any progress so we're trying to figure out what's causing this kind of disconnect, why the weight's not coming off, if there's certain personality characteristics that might predict somebody choose one over the other. So some personalities might tend to sit more, some personalities, may tend to choose certain foods a little bit more often as a reward mechanism. And we're really kind of in the early stages of this research. Nobody has kind of pinpointed exactly what the cause is. We know that it tends to show up a little bit more probably in women, probably middle-aged women tend to compensate is the term that we use more than.
So what does that mean, to compensate?
To compensate. So I burned more calories here, so I get to reward myself.
Okay, so the reward
calories
thing.
over here. So I come out with a net calorie balance of 0. So I'm compensating for those extra calories that I burned. And we haven't figured out why somebody naturally chooses to do that. It's a behavioral mechanism. It's a preservation mechanism. Your body's not supposed to run at a calorie deficit, right? Because you're starving, right? Your body's whole purpose is to live, and it's an anti-starvation mechanism. If you're a bird and you're running low on calories, you cut down on how much moving you're doing to save those calories for time that you would need them, right?
Right.
So if there's famine or if there's seasonal changes in food availability, but for people, there's food available all the time. And so we don't know, we haven't figured out why. We're very early on. We'll get there though. We'll figure it out.
Okay. That's really, really interesting. So when you say exercise program, what kind of exercise program do you provide your participants? Is it catered to them, or is it standardized among the sample?
So we try to match on energy expenditure. So we give them very specific exercise programs to I guess take part in. So we'll adjust their dose. And so we've tried some experiments where we have a really high calorie goal that the person kind of burns while they're in the gym working out with us. Most of it's walking, with an activity that people are pretty familiar with and feel comfortable doing. So most of it's walking. We've tried different calorie doses. So big, heavy calorie expenditure, and then some people that are assigned to kind of a lower calorie expenditure group.
Okay.
We've tried other approaches where it's not based on calories, it's based on distance. We've looked at other approaches where it's not based on how many calories you're burning, it's based on the time that you're spending in the gym, if that is related to that kind of compensatory or compensation effect. But we've tried different approaches, because I think one thing that consumers see a lot of times in the news and media coverage is that you don't need to exercise, and spend hours in the gym. You can do it in 15 minutes at home. Or we just had a study come out from another lab that I saw, and those researchers found that it was only a couple minutes. You could do it in like bursts of 15 seconds, and you could get, right? So we have these messages of, I only need to do 15 seconds, and that gives me the same benefit as doing, 30 minutes or an hour of prolonged exercise. So I think there's a lot of messages that are coming in and people are getting hit with that can make it a really confusing kind of journey for them. Even in some cases, we've seen headlines and news releases come out, and we look at them and say, that can't possibly be true, right? There's no way. And we have we have degrees, and we've been studying this for years, and even then we'll still see some and go, that seems almost too good to be true. There's no way that could possibly happen, right?
Yeah, it's like the old saying, it's too good to be true. It probably is. But it's funny that in some cases it sounds like maybe that's not the case in your field.
I mean, the research, it just came out a couple weeks ago. It was bouts of 15 seconds, and then they would rest for a few minutes, and they would do another 15-second burst, and not looking at weight management, but looking at other outcomes. And so, I think trying to figure out how we can package exercise to get the biggest and most protective benefit. And we look at these kind of health responses, how we get the biggest benefit, but the least demand on, I guess, it's
everybody's dream.
The general health. Well, I mean, if I can get the biggest payoff for doing the least amount of work, then that's the option that I'm going to choose. So how do we package this in a way that makes it really easy for people to take part in, without stressing over all these tiny details, to still get the biggest clinical payoff? I think that's the goal. We just have to figure out a way to package it. Exercise needs more people in charge of marketing.
With your project, I know it's very early on, but do you have any sort of trends that you've been seeing so far in the data that leads you to a certain hypothesis, or might make you begin to start thinking towards a certain conclusion as to what some of those answers to your research questions might be? Well,
we feel pretty good. We haven't figured out why somebody will compensate. I think the data there that we have is kind of all over the place. So we don't have any conclusive evidence right now to suggest that it's one personality trait or one specific component of the exercise program that might make somebody overeat or sit more during the rest of their day, which is a little depressing. But then on the flip side, we know that we can give people, on average, we can recommend that they take part in exercise, and most people won't change their eating behaviors outside of their exercise program. And most people on average don't actually change very much when we look at their activity during the rest of the day. So we can make these recommendations that people engage in exercise and can still feel pretty confident that they're receiving all the health benefits that they normally would without any major changes in diet or activity outside of the exercise program. We just haven't quite figured out why it doesn't work for weight loss.
All right, I hopefully the podcast will get the message out to the world and get them to start seeing it your way.
Yeah.
If only it were that easy, right?
Yeah, well, I think, so we there's Fitbits, and there's MyFitnessPals, and there's these fitness trackers that supposedly can measure calories, that supposedly can measure steps and energy expenditure, and a lot of times they're not as accurate as we give them credit for. And so when you're relying so heavily on a meal tracker that's going to, in some cases, underestimate how many calories you're eating, and you're going to rely on a fitness tracker that in some cases might overestimate how many calories you're burning, I think that can make it very complicated to measure progress also. Just with these really simple, almost primitive checklists, did I walk today? Did I get my servings of fruits and veggies today? Did I drink enough water today? I mean, stuff like that is so easy to monitor and so easy to track. And those don't require you to invest a ton of money. You can already start doing them. So I think we overcomplicate it a lot and make it way more difficult than it needs to be.
Yeah. Plus you can get your immediate gratification with that, you know, like you said, it's just so easy. Just drink your water and check it off the list.
Yeah, done. Like so we have an exercise bike at the house. I keep track of
Mm-hmm.
my streak, like how many days in a row I've been active, not how many calories I'm burning or how many miles I'm biking or how many minutes I'm on. It's just,
Yeah.
did I get up to get on the bike today? Check, done, got it. Like, doesn't matter how long I stay there, doesn't matter how many calories I burn, like, did I get out of bed to the bike? Like, that's the win. And that's such an easy behavior to measure. Like, I
Yeah.
made it downstairs, there it is, success, I can cross it off for the day. So I think behavior change like that is sometimes a lot easier than we give it credit for. We overcomplicate things a lot.
Sure. Oh yeah. We overcomplicate a lot of things.
We overcomplicate a lot.
So in your best case scenario, what are you hoping for your research to accomplish?
I think we're trying to make exercise easy to adopt for everyone. And by
Okay.
easy, I mean, if we're gonna preach the benefits of exercise, we want to come up with the most effective exercise strategy that we can, that requires people to spend as little time doing it as possible. The biggest payoff for the least time investment. And I think
Okay.
if we can figure out how to maximize the potential health benefits from exercise and minimize the time investment, then we've made a huge success. That is everyone's number one barrier to why they can't exercise or why they don't exercise enough, is that there's no time or they don't have enough time to do it. And so if we can figure out, without worrying about teaching time management skills and prioritizing different activities and juggling everything that's going on in your life, like if we can figure out how to minimize the required time investment for people so that they can more easily adopt these behaviors, then I think that's how we measure our success. That's where we'll have the greatest impact.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a dream come true to me.
It would be. I mean, it would be a dream come true for everyone. And to choose the most effective exercise program. So if we're focusing on weight loss, not all exercise is the same. Some may be more effective than others. We just need to figure out what specific type, in what specific intensity, for how long, how to get you the biggest payoff for the least investment. We'll figure it out one day. We're getting there.
One day, one step at a time, right?
One day, we'll figure it out. We're getting there.
Speaking of those steps, what are your next steps for your research program?
If we could take the same program that we would have you do on the treadmill in the lab and have you do it at home, measuring the intensity that you're working out with a heart rate monitor and measuring your steps with a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or something like that, we can measure just about the same things that we would normally be getting in the lab, but now you don't need to do it in our space. You can do it at your space and get probably the same benefit. And you could do it arguably whenever you wanted to, right? Because we know with your Fitbit, it's tracking anytime you're wearing it. So whether you do it at 2 p.m. with us in a supervised research setting or at 5 a.m. at home while the kids are asleep, it's still the same exercise for the most part.
Yeah.
So I think we're trying to move things from a lab setting to kind of the real world setting and make them remote. And I think that's going to open up a ton of opportunities for us because we won't have the same scheduling logistics that we run into. We won't have the same cost. Participants won't run into transportation barriers. They won't run into scheduling barriers. I mean, I think that would really open up a world of possibilities for us. So improving access, I think, is probably where we see the biggest opportunity.
I'm curious, had you thought about going virtual before COVID, or did COVID kind of direct your thinking towards that?
We had thought about going remote before COVID. So we did an intervention at a church, 2 churches actually in Tuscaloosa, and we had to move everything from our lab to the church. There were transportation issues with getting folks on campus. We were trying to test people all at once. Parking was an absolute nightmare. So we took everything from our lab to them to do our testing and do our monitoring. And then they actually had community, like peers, acted as their coaches and delivered the intervention for us. And that worked out pretty well. So they had a peer coach or a peer leader within their congregation that kind of coached them through the intervention and served as kind of a motivating factor for some of the members. And we saw that could kind of work. And we saw that we could move a lot of the data collection tools and tests that we were using. We could move them on to a different location, to a different site, And so that kind of made us realize not everything had to be done in a lab. There's a translational approach that we can kind of move things out into the real world and without sacrificing too much accuracy or control. So I think we had kind of started gravitating toward that route. Transportation is one. One of the things that we keep running into with the university research is that the Tuscaloosa University setting, everyone comes from pretty similar socioeconomic backgrounds, especially students. Like they're all pretty representative of the same group. And so, if we're trying to get populations that are underrepresented in research, we need to improve access. And one of the ways to do that is by driving down costs. And I think we can do that by improving the technology that we're using to deliver it. So that, you don't need to sacrifice, if you're taking part in the research study, your schedule and make adjustments for transportation and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I think it can be done. And I think that it's going to improve access to groups that we haven't had before. And I'm really excited about that.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
Well, just to kind of wrap us up, I know that you currently have a project that you are working on with another collaborator that's under OIC, and we're going to have y'all back on the podcast together. But do you want to give a little sneak peek of it and kind of give a little summary of what it is that you're working on there?
Yeah, so Mike Esco and I are both in kinesiology, and together we developed a smartphone app that can measure muscle and fat from a picture. So you take a smartphone picture with your camera or with your phone or with your tablet, and we can measure muscle and fat with comparable accuracy that we would have in a lab from a smartphone that you've already got in your pocket. And so that has really, it's dovetailed pretty nicely with our focus of improving access to reach different pockets of the population. And so, we don't have to spend 2 hours in the lab measuring body composition with all these different tests and all this expensive equipment. You've already got it in your phone, in your pocket. You could do it at home. And so we can measure and check in with people more frequently, potentially every week. They log into the app, they take a measurement, we can see their data in real time. So I think it does. I think it improves accuracy. I think technology is just opening up a whole world for us. We're trying to figure out, now that we have this measurement piece with the app to measure muscle and fat, trying to figure out how we can use that to deliver programming to reach, different folks who can't come into the lab with us. So it's very fun. Again, never in a million years did we imagine we would be anywhere kind of close to this line of research, but here we are. After 5 or 6 years here at Alabama, we have an app, and we're accidental entrepreneurs, and we're using it for research. And we have a startup kind of based around it too, that we get to kind of use our research lab with. And so it's been very fun. It's a very cool opportunity.
It sounds incredible. I'm excited to learn more about it.
It's going to be so much fun.
Well, I think that just about wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for coming on to the OIC podcast. It was really, really great hearing about your work, and I am super excited to hear more about this app next time you're on.
Thank you very much. We can't wait. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks for listening to OIC, a podcast from the University of Alabama's Office for Innovation and Commercialization in Tuscaloosa. Tune in next time for more inspiring innovators and their impactful inventions. Until then, stay curious, keep learning, and roll Tide.